Good evening and welcome to the Paranormal Lens. My name is Chad Thomas. I'm here with Jamie Widener and we're part of Jotnik's Paranormal. Tonight we have a great show that we've got coming up. So Jamie, how's your week been?
It is Christmas season, sir. I don't remember. It's been a blur.
I understand.
We all have to do the day things, that pay for the other things, and then, the getting ready stuff. And we had a pre-Christmas Christmas this weekend of family, so it was. And then there's another Christmas, of course, the real one coming this weekend, and oh my gosh, it's just a blur. I don't know. I wish I could tell you. I just can't remember it all. How about you?
Well, we were at Boobies on Saturday night, so we had
we did that too. Yeah. Oh yeah, by the way.
Yeah.
The sleep deprivation comes in now too.
Exactly. Yeah. So no, it's a full week of work. You know what I mean? I'm working all week this week. Yeah. So
all those words, right?
Then into the Christmas week. So anyway, we have a great show tonight, Jamie. I know you're excited about it. I'm excited. We have Ron Yacovetti and Lourdes Gonzalez tonight with the Staticom Project. I met Ron and Lourdes in September at Red Mill, which unfortunately you were on the injured list at that point.
Yep.
Didn't make it, but we had a great time. It was a pleasure to work with them. I got to work with them the whole evening. Once our first session started, I was intrigued with the whole process, and as we worked throughout the evening, I was so impressed. I knew we had to get them on here. I can't wait to get them on. So without further ado, let's just bring them right in, okay?
Yeah, please.
Hey guys.
There they are.
Hello, how are you?
Hello and welcome. Thanks for welcoming us. There he goes.
Mm-hmm. Hitting the wrong buttons, that's all.
We do it all the time.
I was like, oh no, we did it again. We leave in the whole sleeves. We come in the whole sleeves.
We had that happen on our own podcast where everybody hosting the show got booted except the guest was there like, what?
He was the only one.
Yeah. And there's 6 of us, so the odds of that.
Oh, wow.
So thank you for having us. Yeah. We watched when you guys did an episode on ITC and you showed some of our stuff. We appreciate the reverence and the respect that was shown to the work that we do. This speaks volumes for our opinions of Chad, having worked with him. I felt very comfortable just giving him our stuff and letting him represent what we do on a show that we weren't on ourselves. So we love the people from Jotnik's. This is very, very nice for us to be here.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you. It's very kind.
Well, we appreciate that. So what got you guys into the paranormal? Let's just start there. I mean, we got a lot to cover, but how did you get into the paranormal?
Well, for me, I grew up with it. My family practices espiritismo, which is a form of mediumship in the Caribbean. And I experienced something that traumatized me. And so I was afraid of it, or I shouldn't say afraid, but I avoided it. I didn't want to hear about it. I didn't want to mess with it, but I was still intrigued by it a little bit. And then in 2016, when I met Ron and we started dating, he brought me into investigations, and then I got back into it again. So,
yeah.
And you, sir?
Thought you'd never ask. I've always been fascinated with it. I may have had experiences when I was younger that when I was looking back, I wrote about it in one of my books. I think it's the second book. The chapter is called The Phantom Drummer. My father was a drummer. He was out. He had extra drums that would be in the basement. He had a soundproof room so the neighbors wouldn't be annoyed. He could still play. He was out with the other drums on a gig. My mom was home. My sister and I were there, and I heard the drums. It was the middle of the night, and I was like, that's not supposed to happen. But at that time, it didn't occur to me. None of this stuff was as mainstreamed as it's gotten. So I kind of chalked it up and just, hid under the covers like everybody else does for ultimate protection and moved on. But always found it fascinating. Hey, Kyle, always found it fascinating. And when I lived in Los Angeles for 14 years, I had an opportunity. At the time, I was dating somebody prior to when we met. And the only thing we agreed on to watch on TV was Ghost Adventures. And they were at some locations that were in the Southern California area. So we went to some public investigations, got invited to join a team, and then flash forward when I moved back to the East Coast in New Jersey, where I'm from in 2014, I had already gotten to be on a team Cherie Rathman. The Rathmans, we'll talk about them tonight. We love them, and they are a huge part of the Staticom project. So I got to move back in 2014. I was on a group called Central Jersey Paranormal Research Group, which is now since defunct, to continue what I was doing. And I thought there really aren't a lot of places around here because I was so familiar with the West Coast. Boy, was I wrong. Because there is tons of stuff here. And the places here, as you guys well know from your events that you do with Jotniks, is phenomenal. So that's how I got started. And I early on was intrigued with the whole ITC thing when, if you know Chad Lindbergh from Fast and the Furious, he did that one show with John L. Tenney when they went in the house one at a time. I forget what it was called. And 30-something people on the third floor of the Glen Tavern Inn in Santa Paula, California, doing a Spirit Box SB7 session. And everybody introduces himself. And it was Debbie Constantino, the late Debbie Constantino was with us at the time. And the last person says their name, and then he goes, and hi, I'm Chad. And not even 20 seconds, give or take, later, a voice clear as day comes through the Spirit Box, which hadn't done anything since it was on, and it went, I know Chad. And I was like, whoa, where did he get that? And how do I sign up? And so the cool thing is actually in 2021, we went to an expo at the MGM in Las Vegas, and I got to tell Chad Lindbergh the Chad story.
Yeah.
Because he's a big part of why I got intrigued with ITC. So that's my story from out there to here. And then when we met, I had a friend from the gym who was going on some very small little private residential thing. And he invited me along because he didn't know a lot of people. Danger is in the room. There he is. Ghosted Magazine, very kind to us. We can talk about that too, that they have us in the next edition. So that's my story. Danger's in the room is because we did the New Egypt Historical Society with them, and he left the room, Danger Close, and he comes back in, and through Staticom, the voice goes, Danger, he's in the room.
Yeah.
And everybody went.
We all repeated it.
Yeah. Great guy. Cool. As all the people who just have already shouted us out here.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
The community is fantastic. I know there's a lot of people who are citing drama these days or talking about who's hating on who or whatever. That's never going to be our platform. And quite honestly, and very much so with the people at Jotniks who treated us incredibly well. I will say this every time, that the field is not great because we're in it. We're in it because it's great. And that will always be my opinion.
Right. It's too tiring to be with all that drama anyway.
Yeah.
It's too tiring.
We can argue at home. We don't need other people.
We can create our own drama.
Right? Be quiet. See? It's so easy to do. We don't need the internet is not necessary.
So you talked a little bit about ITC. So dig into a little bit of ITC, DRV.
Hold on. Let me step back for a second. So before we start throwing acronyms and codes and stuff, explain words and then use the acronyms, right? That's
right.
ITC, full title.
Yes. No, I'm glad you said that too, because I say that there's probably more people running around saying that they're into ITC
and they don't even don't
know where it came from, don't know what it stands for, don't know who coined the term. KFC, very popular. More people know that. Buckets of chicken everywhere. ITC, not so much.
I'm sure metal band, ICP.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
but Jamie, I would hope after my episode a couple of weeks ago,
I know.
You know what ITC is.
That's right. You guys did an excellent episode on it, and we appreciate it.
We need to let the audience know who doesn't know.
Yes. ITC, Instrumental Transcommunication. Originally coined in Europe, I believe, is TCI, Transcommunication Instrumental.
Yeah.
But now ITC, commonly known here in the States for those who look for the sciencey aspect of this stuff that we do, coined by a German physicist named Ernst Sinkowski, who passed not so long ago, a few years back. You mentioned KFC. That's what to see that. Look at that. It's my new abilities into psychical food readings. There you go. So yeah, that's where it comes from. It comes from, and I know a commonly held belief is also that ITC is, as a definition, is a third-party instrument that's not influenced by the operator kind of thing. That may be an attribute of ITC, but the purpose of it was, by the physicist Ernst Sinkowski, was to delineate between, at the time, everything was EVP. Everything was electronic voice phenomena, but when you have dialogue in real time with spirit through radio versus record and review, he thought it deserved to have a different term. That's what ITC was coined for.
Instrumental transcommunication.
Right.
So go on, Chad.
More people know KFC than I see. That's true, Tony Rathman. That's true. But we're changing that, Tony Rathman.
And then DRV.
Oh yeah. So all right. I mean, I can give you the history from where that came. Early EVP researchers were doing EVP recordings, and they started using forms of white noise as audio support to make the voices more audible or detectable. One of which was radios, and there's actually a great book that just came out now about Friedrich Jurgensen, who is the father of direct radio voice, DRV, which predates any Frank's box from Frank Sumption, any Spirit box, any Ghost box, any sweeping radio. It is what came in the evolution of ITC from EVP research. And so Mr. Jurgensen was the father of it, and then Konstantin Radove, who's one of the pioneers of EVP, who was a student of Carl Jung, he got known for it a lot, even for EVP. They used to call EVPs Radove voices. But he, in fact, learned from Jurgensen. And so they started direct radio voice, which was using a barren, empty AM, medium, short, long wave frequency, no radio emissions.
Which is what we started doing.
Right. And that was the genesis of direct radio voice. And I think the same way that commercially VHS became more popular than Betamax tapes, even though Beta was superior in quality, the Ghost box, because it became synonymous. I call it the Q-tip of the paranormal, because when you clean your ear, you grab a cotton swab, but we call it a Q-tip because the brand has made itself synonymous with the item, with the act. So that's what ITC did here because of commercialism and TV. ITC became synonymous with the Spirit box or the Ghost box. So that's pretty much what people know. The method does absolutely work. We have Ghost boxes. We've people who build them. They're fantastic. It works. We weren't building boxes. And when we saw this method from Europe, when I read books from Dr. Annabella Cardoso, who mentored me, and I think she's the last surviving person from the original guard of people who really pioneered audio phenomenon from Europe. Sinkowski's gone. Marcello Bacci, who made direct radio voice most famous in Italy for 20-something years. Bacci's gone.
Robin Foy is gone.
Robin Foy from the Skull
Recently.
Experiment, who sat with them, was gone. David Fontana, is a parapsychologist, and an author, he's gone. The Harsh Fishbacks in Luxembourg, gone. Mark Macy's really not present anymore. He's from Colorado. So she mentored me into it. I read her books. I got the chance to talk to her. We still talk to this day. And I couldn't believe when I saw Bacci's work that nobody was doing it. I couldn't believe it. I looked at her. I went, "Do you see this?" And then
he was helping parents grieve.
Yeah.
He would do sittings, and parents would come who lost children, and he was getting their voices through the radio. The parents would recognize their voices. The parents would ask them questions that only they would know. And he was helping out, he was helping them grieve. He was helping them have closure. So that's what he was doing when he was doing direct radio voice.
Which is
and
funny.
If I remember correctly, he was doing this all out of the goodness of his heart too, right? It wasn't something he charged for or anything like that. It was just,
That's correct. He didn't take a dime for 20-something years. There are, when we did our docuseries on Paraflix called Knowingly Talking to the Unknown with Tony and Sri Rathman, based on direct radio voice and its evolution to Staticom, Dr. Cardoso did give me a heads up that there were some more recent critics, as she said, of the most recent before passing work of Bacci, who were claiming, I guess, that he was using old recordings or whatever. I don't know to speak to it. I know that, sometimes if something becomes a financial strain, he may have felt the onus to perform, on command at the end. I don't know, but she said she was with him for 20-something years. She was friends with him and his wife, and he had his radios opened up. They took tubes out. I mean, you guys know, and he still got voices. So he was the genuine article really for the better part of 20-something years. The ironic part is that we saw that and we wanted to see if we could replicate that kind of result because nobody was doing it. So we got this big boombox radio and we started doing long wave and medium wave and trying to do direct radio voice. Flash forward, the digital seance initiative or live events we do where we have been giving people these moments of closure or contact. and we're not selling them anything. Like, they hear these names and voices that they know, proprietary information they know. We don't know it. And we have a page on our website of testimonials that are from these events. So we're doing what he did,
which we weren't even expecting. We wasn't even. We were doing it for the voices and the research and the excitement of it. And then the same thing started happening with us in events that people's loved ones would come through. And we've had people come up to us and say, "Thank you. This was life-changing." And we feel blessed to be able to do that for people.
Yes, Todd and Carmel also, who've been with us a lot. The documentary on Bocce, I know it's the one, I think it's translated from, I don't know if it's not in Italian, it's in German or French. Documentary company
maybe
did
Portuguese.
it. Yeah, and there's also Calling Earth on Vimeo. The Afterlife Experiments, about the skull experiment. They all mention, they have Dr. Cardoso and Marcello in it. So
we started doing direct radio voice, and from direct radio voice we evolved to Staticom. So we've removed the radio, and we only use now generated white noise. So that's what we do. So no radio involved now. And we're getting voice.
We've got a bunch of
Sorry.
We've got a bunch of clips that you guys sent us. So why don't we start with some of those? This one, the first one I have on the list is the Talking to Austin Spirit. Ron, do you want to prelude, introduce it all?
Yeah, and this is the first time we're sharing it anywhere because Austin, who's named in it, had shared it on Facebook. This was pre-action. We did an episode of Deathwalker with Nick Groff that's supposed to come out soon, I guess, for season 4. And before we were actually filming for the show, when we were running it and testing the sound, we were putting the speaker through Bluetooth upstairs where Nick was going to be. We were downstairs on camera separate. And in the testing of it, I went upstairs just to communicate and see if I could hear the voices clearly. And I asked, I think, for my name or something just to see what was coming through. And Austin Maynard, who is one of the finest ITC people in the business, builds amazing ghost boxes.
No, really good guy.
Fantastic. Yeah, he's a good human being. That's
very good human being.
That's the biggest takeaway from that guy, besides the fact that he's brilliant. And he's a tech guy for the show. So the voice came through and was asking for him. And it even pegged what he was doing.
Okay. All right, let's run it.
Who am I? What's my name? Austin's downstairs.
Voicing smoking.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
And that was in fact true.
He was vape pot smoking.
And so that was direct radio voice. We were still using the radio on a Baron AM channel, I think in shortwave or medium wave for the source of the white noise at that time.
Okay. Yeah, I sort of broke the clips up. I have all the DRV stuff first, and then move into Staticom. So.
Cool. I mean, methodologically, it's the same. What happened was, two events led us to not use the radio anymore, which we love because it now vets the authenticity of what we're doing. Because there's two main criticisms with ITC, but the big first one is you're getting radio voices. Well, that's off the table because we're not using a radio. But the two things that led to it was we did Sterling Mine in New Jersey with New Jersey Paranormal. We're under the surface of the earth where radios, cell phones, and their signals go to die. And you can't get anything. And we got voices through the white noise somewhere there was no signal whatsoever. And that struck us. Secondly, and this is where we mentioned Tony and Sheree Rathman, who are part of the Entity Voices Paranormal Investigations, under which we're under the same umbrella. Tony's 12 or 13 year ITC guy, built ghost box after ghost box, very silent ones, very good ones. Never sold them, which is one of the reasons why I loved him as a research partner, because he never did it for going to market and profit. He was really in it for the research. And so he knows the ghost boxes now. Since he's been doing direct radio voice and now Staticom, he has not turned one on, him and his wife Sheree, for at least 2 years. So zinc mine, no signal, voices. The second part of why we took the radio out and realized we could was Tony and Sheree were doing an explanation or a presentation at a Paracon in Arizona. And he did what I would consider, in my opinion, a very ballsy thing. Never having tried it before in front of an audience, he used a sleep machine as a white noise source because he knew it wasn't a radio to see if it would work. It worked. What he found out was that it had a 3-second loop. So when we say we're using a white noise generator, it's not a sleep machine because those are pre-recorded white noise and it's looped. If you're sleeping or playing it, you would never know where it starts and finishes. But if you've ever done EVP before, I know you have, and there's like 5 recorders going, right? And only one person gets the voice. It's in it. We believe it's an imprint. That happened to Tony. He got a voice that responded 3 words, and every 3 seconds, those words kept coming through the speaker. The voice imprinted onto the chip quarter in the sleep machine.
And that's how he discovered it was a 3-second loop.
Right.
Because it was 3 words or 2?
3.
Kept going, kept just repeating. So now he can't use that machine.
Yes.
So we knew we couldn't use sleep machines because there's a possibility of that happening. Not all the time, but there's a possibility. And when it does, you got to throw the machine away. And what you're going to do, buy another machine?
So some ghost cost him $24 on Amazon. That's the point here. But it was ballsy to do that in front of a live audience.
Yeah.
And it taught us something.
Between that and what happened to us in the zinc mine, we realized we can do this without a radio because it's the white noise that's facilitating contact, not the RF signal or the carrier wave.
Right.
And so we ran with that theory, and that's why we called it Staticom. We didn't think direct radio voice was proper now that the radio was out, but methodologically it's the same process except the source.
It was either that or direct no radio voice.
Yeah.
That's too long.
Yeah.
No, that's like when it was the artist formerly known as Prince.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to say all those extra words only to say Prince at the end anyway.
Right.
I'm still saying it.
I got to tell you this, guys. When I first heard Staticom, I thought it was like the perfect competitive company to Cyberdyne from Terminator 2. Like it was the company that made the other bad robots. So,
that's great.
It's a great name. Like it really is. And it's so cool. It could be a lot of things, but it makes sense.
One of the early
credit we have to credit Tony Rathman
for
that.
Tony Rathman. That was his brainchild. The name Staticom. I think we got it. He was the one that introduced it to us. Similar to if one of the early ITC breakthroughs, and it was highly scrutinized with George Meek and William O'Neill, was something called Spiricom, which had a lot of different oscillators. I think like 14, all the different tones. I think of the male vocal track that it covers. This whole wall monstrosity of computers, and supposedly he was a ventriloquist, and he was, but I don't know enough to speak to, that it was hoaxed or not. I know that ventriloquism and spirit communication are not strangers. Yeah. When Edison came out with his first recording device, at that time, there was a very prominent French scientist who came forward and proudly said, "I've seen Mr. Edison's device, and I believe it is being performed through ventriloquism." That guy's probably not worth as much anymore.
But isn't that the case with everything that is hard to explain or unique? The first thing to do is say it's fake, and without walking the path of understanding and doing the science with it. And it's not like things are beyond the realm of comprehension. This is slightly science. This is more science than anything. It's not rocket science though, where there's a whole board full of equations and stuff. It's equipment, it's places, it's people, and it's intentionality. But people don't want to take the time to understand how it works, and therefore automatically discredit it. And it's a shame to the field in general, because there's a lot of great stuff that does really work.
That's because of the accepted definition. The accepted definition of science in today's world, the world instantiation of science, is materialist reductionist science, which means that everything can be reduced to mass, spin, charge, position. And that is not the case with a lot of the stuff that we do. And I think that's one of the problems with the paranormal field, is that we say this is paranormal, supernatural, this beyond measurable science. And then in an effort to prove it to people who do or don't believe it, who do or don't participate, we try to cram it into some materialist physics worldview that they accept within their rule book. We just said that it doesn't operate under those guidelines, and now we're trying to cram it into that to make it known to them. That's a problem. So I'm huge on this too, because I think the terminology we use and the way we frame and label things is a big part of the message we send and whether or not what we do gets accepted. Part of the reason that this stuff gets scoffed at too is because it's not science that's on the table. It's an ideology that's on the table, because when they talk about things like string theory and alternate dimensions and endless time, right? That stuff, there's nothing to substantiate that that's measurable whatsoever, but it doesn't get the pushback that the paranormal gets because it's not threatening an ideology. And that's the difference. But it's actually, in fact, if you look at it, less substantiable than it is with paranormality. Right, string theory is a huge thing. You oscillating strings that are, tying between realms, whatever. But nobody knows what are those strings.
I thought you were going to talk about the irreducible computation, because that would have been a perfect part.
Yes, well, no, that's with the white noise. We'll get to that.
Okay.
So that's
yes, it applies. But go ahead. It kind of applies to this too. But go ahead.
Well, this goes back to what you said earlier about when they're getting into the paranormal. You want to go put the covers over your head. That's what people want to do. They don't want to accept that there is an alternative thing out there that you just and we say it all the time. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So we're trying to explain the things that aren't visible, and that's where people just go off the rails with it. And no. It's just let's just figure it out. If you give us 5 minutes to explain it.
A lot of stuff is not visible. The other problem is that they say scientific method is to lean into what's most probable and to rule out everything else. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is that presupposes that we can know everything else. I don't think that we can. And that's the thing that our platform has become more and more of a philosophical position. Because again, I think if you try to have this debate with people who don't buy into it, and you stick to the materialist physics, everything's measurable and reductionist point of view, then that's like saying, no, home field, you have it. Coin toss, you take it. You know what? We'll give you a 10-point lead. It's like they have to have this in a neutral arena and deal with the facts and what we know or don't know out of the, right out of the gate. Right. It is. People are afraid what they don't know. But again, a lot of the times, the fear or the rejection of it is rooted in a bias, because your paradigm or your belief system is supposed to be an aggregate of information and empirical experience and education, and it's not. It's in fact, for most people, especially from that school, it's a filter through which they exclude things that don't fit into it. That's not the way science works. Science is a method of inquiry. It's not an ideology, and it's not one person. And I guess I'll make the same joke every time, but people will go, one day science will accept. One day science will explain. But first of all, one day science will explain. That's called promissory materialism, and that's not probable. But to keep referring to science as one person is absurd. And I always say, you wouldn't go to school. Nobody went to school and thought that sex ed was one dude getting all the action.
I mean, a good example of it is Dr. Rupert Sheldrake in the UK, a biologist. He, in his studies, he was researching, and he discovered that the speed of light dropped 20 kilometers per second between the years of 1923 and 1945. So he decided to go to the head scientist in the meteorologist department over there, and he spoke to him, and he said, look what I discovered. And the scientist said, oh, you discovered the most embarrassing moment in science. And he goes, well, Dr. Sheldrake was like, why? There's so many doors can open from this, and we can learn so many things. And the doctor said, well, the speed of light didn't change. And he goes, what do you mean it didn't change? And the doctor was like, because it's a constant. He learned that it was a constant, and he was stuck that it was a constant. And even though he had numbers that showed that there was a change, they decided, and this was done globally, to fudge the numbers to come up with the number that they decided the speed of light, the rate of the speed of light was. So that's what they did. So they choose, even if it's right in their face, if it doesn't match with what they're trying to do, they'll push it aside and they'll ignore it.
Yeah, which is scientific. That's scientism. That's not science. Because there are people in the field who say that they're skeptics, and they're not skeptics. They're cynics, Or in fact, if somebody says, and I'm big on terminology because we use these all the time, there are people who call themselves skeptics and they go, all this paranormal stuff is bullshit. It's not real. All right. Well, then you're not a skeptic, because a skeptic looks for absolution in the truth. That's a belief system. So really what you are is a believer, except sociologically and societally, the word believer gets attributed to the person who believes everything is a ghost, and they take the more educated, well-to-do, well-spoken term of skeptic. But that's not what a skeptic is. That's a belief system, and it's closed-minded, and it's driven by bias. So it's not the same thing. That's scientism, is to say that this doesn't fit into the paradigm, therefore we don't acknowledge it. But again, philosophically, to reject something is to call it into existence. To choose good choices is to acknowledge bad. So this stuff is very much a thing, and it doesn't go away just because you ignore it.
Well said.
Yeah.
So let's check out another clip.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
How about a transition?
The next one I've got up is Rockaway.
Oh, cool. Yep. Okay. This one is just we were doing it was a library lecture with Richard Michelle from New Jersey Paranormal Project, the Ghost History Medium, Kim Geyer, and ourselves. And we were doing Staticom, and Richard asked, he did the little thing, and he asked the spirits what he was doing.
Okay.
Gonna do something, you tell me what I'm doing.
Knocking. I heard knocking. Knocking. It was
Again. Who heard that?
Yes.
Clear.
And this is what amazes me, that you can hear different tones and ages and things in these voices that come through. It's not the same voice over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was definitely, it sounded like a young child, a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, the voices are so distinct. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, that was a public library event. And that was direct radio voice, as you said, you put them in that order. So that was
everyone heard it.
Yeah, everybody in the room heard it.
So I noticed something there, and it may be obvious that you're doing this in the daytime, or at least in a lighted room. We get asked all the time, why do you investigate in the dark? Why do you do it at night? And for us, it's a lot about equipment. It's about calmness of the space. We have a home gig at Booby's Brewery in Mountjoy, PA. So we're there later in the evening to begin with. There's an event usually before us that's in some of the space we share. So we're trying to let that pass through and leave and calm down. There's street traffic. It's a public building in a town. So there's ambient noise, there's ambient light. Those kind of things. But your work doesn't really rely on that at all. And I think that's one of the things I noticed. First looking through what I found so far is that this is everywhere, anywhere, anytime, and that to me is fascinating. Number one, because you get to sleep a decent night's sleep, right? I'm looking back to the weekend, and I was, we entered the intro. I was like, I was talking to Chad before. I was like, I'm just beat, like I wonder why, but doing an investigation all night, and then having the thing the next day, like we all have day jobs and stuff that we do, so and family and everything else. But it is nice to be able to stop and drop into a place at any point and do the work, and likely have a productive session. That's amazing to me. And it's.
I think one of the things that, I don't know if you actually say it anywhere, but I know it's in some of the background, is the spirits are always talking. We just don't know where to listen.
Right.
Yeah,
maybe I'm paraphrasing that a little bit, but
no, you're spot on, man. Chad's good. We always say we will not deem a location haunted purely on the strength of anomalous voices, because we can get them anywhere.
They're all around us all the time. We just can't hear them.
And I don't think that's a large stretch. I mean, right now there's radio going past your head. You don't hear it. It's not at a level that you're able to detect it. It doesn't interact with your sensory input. But if you have a device that modulates it and makes a sound something that's detectable, ta-da, radio. And even if you look at even the physics standpoint of it, you have solid walls, windows, roof, floor. So something is vibrating at a different level than something else for that radio signal to be able to come through your solid material house and get to the radio. So when you start looking at these things, it doesn't sound so far-fetched. And when we do our system, it's a closed circuit system. It's a white noise generator running through an interface through the software and then comes out the speaker. So there's no ambient point of entry for contamination or for a vocal in the room or anybody to enter into the equation. And people go, well, how do the voices get in there? That's the point, I think, is because we're producing something that we're saying is paranormal. So why should the explanation be something that material science can just go, oh, there it is?
Right. They're trying to fit a square, into a circle.
Yeah.
A circle into a square. Excuse me.
That sort of takes me back to your show from maybe 2 weeks ago. And I can't remember if it was Tony and Cherie or the other couple, where they were doing an investigation and they were I think using StreamYard. They were using some sort of thing, and they were getting voices through the StreamYard feed or whatever live they were using.
That was Tony and Cherie. Yep. That was Tony and Cherie. Yep. They have an incredible body of work, and Staticom would not be as good as it is or where it is had we not partnered with them. They're incredible people. And when I tell you that we've been doing direct radio voice for close to 6 years. They've been involved for maybe almost 2 years or whatever. And the impact and the amount of time they've been involved is tremendous.
In the first few months, even.
Okay, Amanda, you just became my hero. You can't put everything in a box. We get asked that a lot. When are you going to sell it? When is this going to be available? People would say, how do I get that box? Where do I find that device? It's a method. It's not a box or a device. Again, Q-tip, right? ITC is synonymous with a box, so people think if it's spirit communication and it has radio or whatever, it's got to be something you can tote around. It is portable. We brought it to New Orleans. We brought it to the House in Between in Mississippi. We're bringing it to the UK in 2024 for Festival of the Unexplained.
People think it's easy because they see the laptop and the components, but really there's a lot of work involved in getting every little component just the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it changes all the time. It can change. Like if for some reason the voices aren't working, you gotta twig it here and there. So it's not as easy as people may think it is.
It's just like being, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to simplify. It's like being an audio engineer. Every performance is different. You have to go in and you have to be making adjustments to the system as you go for the live performance. Not that it's a performance, but from what I understand, your system needs to be tweaked and adjusted for the situation.
And then if you got to switch laptops, forget about it. You gotta,
And sometimes it doesn't have to be tweaked or adjusted, but it is a methodology, and it did take time to develop. And when we first started doing it, it was for the research. We had no plan to profiteer from this and to go to market with it. So what we've been talking about is maybe we would at some point make it available through selling like a mapping, like a consult, to set it up and go, these are the parts that we're using, this is the order that they're in, these are the settings. But then there's going to be a level of independence on the operator, because nobody has the time to geek squad everybody who starts doing it to fix every little thing. And what she's referring to is that when we started, I had a Windows Surface computer, and as we built out Staticom, I was eating up 99% of the resources when I was running it. And I think you may have the one clip, if I sent you the one that said your instruments has pulsing beats. Did I send you that one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when that happened, my computer for 2 weeks, thank God we had no events. I was having a hard time using it because it would go, and it was sputtering the sound. So for 2 weeks, I got a gaming laptop, right? I'm like, I'm good. I got resources, problem solved. Oh no. 64-bit conversions. I had to change things. And so believe you me, every other day I retired like a professional prize fighter. I was like, I'm done. Thank God Tony's doing this because I'm done. I've contributed to ICC. Good night. I'm out.
The point is, you got to put in the work.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as people think. When we first started without the laptop and the software, when we were doing the radio, that was a lot of work. We sat there and listened to white noise, hours and hours and hours of white noise until we started getting voices. People started seeing what we were doing. They wanted to do it and they tried it. We showed them how to do it. They didn't follow up because they saw how much work it was and then they gave up. So with this, it's the same thing. Like, we can show you, but the minute you have like a problem, you can't call us. You got to put in the work and figure it out, because that's part of the process. That's part of the journey in what we do.
Yeah. And to Amanda's question too, it's a digital audio workspace within which there are several independent components. It's very Frankenstein's monster in the assembly, because there's different things. If you have an audio engineering background, some of the stuff that I've chosen to do would be counterproductive or counterintuitive if you were making tunes.
Right.
But we're not making tunes. Oh no. So makes it a little different. I'm half clown on my father's side. Let me get that out of the way now. And so it is a process within which the operator has to be attuned to what's going on.
Right. But I think that's exciting too, because there's new developments that could come from that by people experimenting and trying different things.
Because they're putting in the work, and it's a process. That's
to quote Tony Rathman, we have yet to discover what the limits of Staticom are. And he says it all the time. And thank God, by the way, when I had that laptop problem, he was there to help me, because I was like, I'm done. I felt like Mike Tyson with no knockout power. I'm like, why am I here? But
I have no doubt if they both went down on the voices at the same time, that they can figure it out. But I wouldn't want them down at the same time, because they would drive me and Cherie crazy.
Yeah, it's not pretty.
It's not pretty at all.
Why don't we go ahead and play that clip that you talked about earlier? Okay, so I'm just going to run it.
Maybe they're trying to connect, and since it's doing another.
I'll let it play out for a minute.
I'm gonna message her now. If that's you trying to connect to Tony and Cherie, please keep doing your thing then.
What happened here? What happened to us? Sorry about that.
Now that just to make sure everyone knows, that one is actually Staticom versus DRB, correct?
Yes, that's correct. That was during the laptop crisis.
Yeah, that was
that was when I was sitting in front of a computer listening to Sam Smith music, weeping.
It was bad, man.
We've all done that to Sam Smith, though. Come on. When and you have obviously a lot of experience, and what I find here, that exact instance of a call and response question answer, is that normal in your experience, or are you picking up at times just the randomness that like I would think something that would be residual would present? You're getting intelligent. It appears to me, and it's a constant, that you're getting intelligent responses to direct questions or direct reply. And that is the fascination for me, because that is that's unique. Than things that the common folk in the field are used to, because we're going backwards. With a digital recorder somewhere after the event, or a camera, somewhere after the event, going back to it, and then you're not live anymore. You're not in the moment. And it's fascinating, right? Because it's exciting, but it's not something that can be followed up on. It's not something that can continue because it was there, and if you're lucky enough to capture, of course, too, to have it be clear enough to understand it. This, what's the longest conversation you've had? Or
I know
most detailed?
we've had. That's a great question. We have we've sat at like the Shanley Hotel or at the Hoover House
Oh,
in
that was a little. That was.
Waynesboro.
Yeah.
Literally, it's like an open line. Like you could sit there, and we've reduced the noise floor so you don't really hear it. But then you'll ask a question, and then you'll hear a vocal response. And the voices are longer and clearer, I think, in comparison to a sweeping box. And there's a familiarity with even with the environment. There you go. Tony had over 7 minutes. Tony Rathman called me up one time. He goes, "All right, this is when he was new with direct radio voice." He goes, "This is the first time I've ever had this happen to me." I went, "What happened?" He goes, "They asked me questions," which is conversational, and that is what a dialogue is, right? Even though you're interviewing us today, we may ask you a question too, because it's a dialogue. And some of the information we get is she would ask, "What color is a couch? What color are my glasses? What am I holding up?"
And get relevant responses. But I think that a lot of the voices that we get are them trying to tell us their story. But we do get a nice amount of dialogue that we go back and forth, like moments. And then the interesting thing, though, when you were talking about like residual in the Shanley, when the Shanley that time we were there, and I don't know how long we were there, and it seemed like what was going on was residual. It seemed like a man and a woman arguing, and it would kind of like repeat itself and over again, but they weren't really like answering us until someone said, Kelly says, "You want me to go upstairs?" And then someone intelligent said, "Get the upstairs." So
yeah,
I don't know if we get both or do they ignore us?
And I'm not even sure that was residual necessarily.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
who knows?
Either, but it's fascinating. And again, if you want to go back to the material science point of view, where they think everything can be reduced to mass, spin, position, and charge, and everything's measurable, visually, right? The way that we would see things is through vibration of like the color, hits the rods and cones, processes neurologically. But when we ask them without the physical body and without eyes, what color is this or what is that? And they answer, that is outside of material physics as we know it.
Right.
We're not sure how they're attaining that information. It could be through consciousness. I think, again, this is a theory. I think they're grokking that information through our sensory input. If we're part of a unitary consciousness, like a big body of water, with each one of us is in an individual dissociative state or an alter, right? We're like the whirlpool in the greater body of water. And if we're connected to that, I think when we put that into consciousness, they're able to give us that answer visually. But we've had them tell us that they hear our words and our thoughts.
Yeah.
So it's part of what we still don't understand. You go, they don't understand that you're here, plus the times they're speaking to each other. Yes. Look at that, Tony Rothman. Yep, quoting that's Konstantin Radovich said that it's tantamount to wiretapping the dead. That is true. Sometimes they're not even talking to us, but white noise being generated in the moment on a closed circuit system running through should not have any voices. There's no data.
That's what I was going to say.
At all in the white noise. There's none. So there shouldn't be anything vocal whatsoever. We'll speak to the secondary criticism that comes after you tell them there's no radio in it anymore, because that's a whole other. They're grabbing something, anything to keep their disbelief afloat.
Let me play another clip. I'm going to start the next one. I'm going to do the DRV session with your mom and grandmother.
Okay, actually, that's perfect. So this one was the impetus for what we do. There's two things that we're doing with Staticom that were unique to ITC. And again, to go to Jamie's point, dialogue in the moment is what ITC is supposed to be, right? So we looked at the process of cleaning up the sound. What do people do with audio capture? They take it home, put it in software, they denoise it, they slow it down, amplify it, present it. But if we're supposed to have dialogue with spirit in real time, why would we wait till we went home to make it more audible? So we do, with the method, live filtration. We're doing it in the moment. We were introduced to the concept of live filtration from a gentleman from Paranormal.com named Keith Clark. And then we kind of expounded and expanded on the model or the modality that he introduced us to. But that's ITC, dialogue real time. So we took the cleanup, moved it to the moment of contact. This clip introduces the thing that we've done that was the first time, in my knowledge, that anybody in ITC has done, which is we took the flow of live white noise in real time and slowed that down. And we did it because of this clip, where I believe it was my mother and grandmother, and I didn't hear any of it in the moment, except on, which was my name, but I thought they said the word on. And early pioneers of research in IDC, like Konstantin Radovi, said that the voices not only come in faster than we can detect, they come in faster than the human vocal tract is capable of speaking. So this clip is 50% slowed down, 50%. And it sounds as normal as I'm enunciating now. I sound intoxicated. I assure you, hours later that happened. Not at the time, but no.
He doesn't drink.
I always, yeah.
He always says that he doesn't even drink.
So keep that in mind.
Here we go. Let me run this. Yep.
You know who I am? It's turned on. Is my mother gonna be here tonight? She'd be right back. She was having allergy issues with her eye, so she had to go get drops in.
So,
You sound very
Hi,
relaxed.
Jamie.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So that voice
So, I
came
mean,
in. That's 50% slowed down.
so you couldn't understand that in the moment. You didn't.
I didn't even
wasn't
hear it.
until you.
I didn't even hear it in the moment. It came in so fast. That's 50% slowed down.
Okay.
That's how fast that voice came in. Now, I don't care if you're an auctioneer on cocaine. You can't talk that fast and enunciate and pronounce words clearly. Lourdes by trade is a court reporter, so she listens to people talking at different cadence speeds, dialect over each other, background, foreground. So I always say, because we've had some audio engineer in the past critique certain things and say, "Oh, that's not speech," whatever. Listen, I have a court reporter. You know how sound behaves and how to produce it. She listens to it and gets paid by the state of New York to assess it for legal reasons. Trust me when I tell you, she hears everything. I won't say anything bad about her if she's in the house. Everything.
You shouldn't anywhere, by the way. Just
That's true. But
friendly guy advice here, sir.
yeah, no, I agree. Point taken.
So how about I go ahead and play the other one from your mom then, the one that's Staticom. So let me just go ahead and roll that, and then you can explain it afterwards.
Sure. If my mom and grandmother can hear, can you say Florence and Lucy? Florence, I hope you're asking.
I apologize. I had to step away. My
That's okay.
I missed you. I'm gonna say.
Oh, see?
so sweet.
I know.
Thank you.
So what are your thoughts on that one, Jamie?
Man, it is it's compelling. and it's real. It's there. I mean, I hear it. I hear it clear as day. And I would hear it without the subtitle add-on. And that helps, of course. And I think anybody who's in the field who's listened to countless hours, recordings, in playback, you have to go through it so many times, and you're really, I think I wind up throwing out more stuff because I'm not sure, it's not clear than I do ever have a good capture. We all want a class A, right? We want somebody to say something so bold and crystal clear that you can never contest it. And you want it to not be, somebody, it sounds like anybody, so there's no challenge to the evidence, but, it is clear. And it's, I don't need the subtitle to understand what they're saying. That's fascinating.
I appreciate that too. We annotate it because it's part of the presentation. And in the last book that I just had come out called Paranormalization, Memoirs of an Academic Layperson, I addressed the power of suggestion thing, because people will say, well, you're trying to make me hear it. Well, how powerful is this suggestion? Like, could I put the soundtrack to the Waltons on behind the show, the Jeffersons, and make people think they're watching that show? I mean, so you're saying that your visual sensory input is going to override your auditory input if it sounds close enough, or no? I mean, the thing is, it's, again, if we're going to use terminology, especially as parameters of paranormality, we need to at least know within what context or boundaries that definition exists. Can you influence somebody with the words? Perhaps, but I think if it says interpretation, it would have to sound like it would have to have at least the syllables in the cadence of it. You couldn't get the word Smithtown and have somebody think it says interpretation. Power of suggestion doesn't go that far. We have people who say, I don't hear that. It'll still happen sometimes. The words are for us to say, this is what we heard.
Sure. Well, I wish our partner Dave Dermidi was with us. He goes to confirmation bias a lot as a backstop to separation. And when you want to hear something, you're going to hear it, right? Well, and I'm not suggesting that here by any means, because I think I can tell the difference, but
that's when you have to use discernment, right?
Right. And that's another, not to jump on it, but that's another huge thing. Like when we lecture, that pareidolia or concept that you're going to hear what you want to hear. So if that's going to be something that's going to be a claim as a criticism of any audio capture, I'm not saying from us, because I know you're not saying it about what you just heard. To say that, then you have to show what are the biological and physiological differences between when you hear what you want to hear and when you don't, because more often than not, you don't. If the intent of hearing what you want to hear is that powerful, when you have a room full of people at a session, what determines where your thoughts come through my device, but his don't? Why don't they all come through and it's some mishmash of just auditory, mess? Has anybody ever been driving to work and they're listening to their favorite tune, and in their head they're thinking, God, I hate my boss, and that comes out of the radio because their intent? There's a lot of variables that are not tested in this. So, and we talk about this with ITC, because one of the things people say with the radio is that you're getting warbles and artifacts of sound, because theoretically there's a non-zero chance of finding a pattern in random noise. However, it's not random. I love this. Dr. Bernardo Kastrup, random is an empty drawer. It's what we use for something when we don't understand it, when we can't explain it. What it is it's computationally irreducible. At the moment, white noise has an equal amplitude, but what they call randomness, there are factors involved that are not practical or probable or possible to measure. So we use the term random for something that we can't compute at the moment, or it's not practical to do. But those things are deterministic. So those are not, I don't think, warbles and artifacts of sound. I think with intent that those are sounds that are forged into words and language that we know the same way we do it when we speak.
When we were sitting in Red Mill and we had what we have, like 20 people at a time in the mill, and you had 3 or 4 people who hear the same thing,
right?
You can't write it off as pareidolia or anything at that point, because people are hearing the same thing.
Right, but it gets categories like that at what the random is. But white noise Because that's what white noise is. The signal to noise ratio is what's being deferred. What we think the voices come through what's called stochastic resonance, which something enters into the white noise and it matches one of the frequencies. Those two get bolder. The rest of the white noise stays at the same amplitude. So that's stochastic resonance. So with white noise, when you have a sufficiently stronger signal, you can almost ignore the noise, and then that's when it'll get attributed to being random. But it's not fundamentally random. Electromagnetic interference of sources that you're not measuring at the time or can't. The ions of the sun, like there's different things that are, from electromagnetic perspective, that are part of that being deterministic, but it's not practical or probable or possible to measure it or calculate it at the time. So it's computationally irreducible, but it's not random. It's just you're not able to calculate what it is that's influencing it, and that's a difference. Todd and Carmel. Yep.
I think this is a good point too. Like if you have several people watching one of your live sessions, because you figured out how to do Staticom Live, which I think is amazing on like Facebook. I think when several people are hearing the same thing there, and they're not in the room, they're not getting the subtitles, you're not there,
right?
And they're hearing the same thing.
And so I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's also important that we know for reference and referral who did what before us. The pioneers of ITC and EVP had done experiments where they had 20 different people, I think 25, send in questions on a cassette tape, and then the guy made a conglomerate of all those questions onto one tape, played it in a room for EVP purposes with another recorder recording. So there was nobody in the room to be an influence to hear what they wanted to hear, and questions still got answered on the recording. So it removed that element from it. I don't know that it doesn't ever happen. I have not seen it. I think it's one of those things it's kind of like one of the axioms of the paranormal, where it's passed down the same way turkey is part of Thanksgiving. It's accepted as that's part of how it works, but it's not spoken to. It's not substantiated. We don't even know why. It's just something we hear.
Right.
One of the things that strikes me as really interesting, and it was in the first clip with your mother when she identified herself, and your grandmother. When we're in a session, we're trying to connect, right? We're asking who's here with us, and the answer could be present, it could be provided, but we're not hearing it. And there was one of our teammates shared a meme earlier. It was an EVP session. There's like all these bubble questions, and at the bottom is the ghost, a character or characterization of a ghost saying, "Geez, give me a second. I'm in another dimension here," And the idea is we expect call and response, right? Immediate stuff in a session where we can't capture the response in the stylization that we're doing it in, with a recorder or a camera, And what is, well, I'm just going to say it now. I'm inviting you guys to come out to Movies Brewery, because I think you'll find some interesting things. And especially the catacomb space, which is about 43 feet underground. It is a cavern that's been cut through stone and granite, and there's very little signal down there of any interference to begin with. So but we're capturing interesting stuff there all the time, more so than some other spaces in the property lately, at least. It's been a highly active area. But that is the answer to the obvious question. Is the first question is who's here with us. We'll identify ourselves. We do the etiquette of a session, and then we expect a response. And then we're using things like flashlights or cat balls or the tactile things that really may be challenged for a spirit to contact or operate the device, where there probably is audio happening or a verbal response happening around us, because that's common, right? That's what we all do. We talk, and I'm talking too much probably right now, but we do this. We communicate verbally more so than we touch things or make things happen. So I think it's a fascinating way of just making this be legit. Who is really here with us? and
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's shy, right? So it doesn't seem like it anyway.
No, and 70%, I think, of human communication is visual. So that you're not afforded the luxury of that part of it either. So you really have to be attentive when doing something like this to not miss things that come by. But a lot of times, I think even with EVP and stuff, the answers come fast. A lot of people have had the experience of recording or with a ghost box, and the second you finish the question or as you're finishing it, the answer's coming through. Which speaks again to, we feel, to unitary consciousness, because that's superluminal contact. That's faster than speed of light. But that's because we think of conversation or data traveling distance to traverse. But if it's already there through your connection to unitary consciousness, then it's different, right? Spirits are not confined to time, space, so voices can't determine a place is haunted. Right, 100%, Tony. Yep. We agree with that. That's another axiom of the paranormal too. People will go, and this is an accepted common belief among most paranormalists, is that spirits are not bound to space-time the way we are.
Right.
At the same time, someone will say, what's the ghost frequency? I'm trying to figure out what frequency they're on. We might be able to figure out what for us is the best frequency to receive or hear them, but we don't know what frequency they're on. And in fact, what is frequency? It's a measure of oscillations per second. So if you don't have the measure of time within which we use to determine frequency, how do you determine if they're on a given frequency?
Again, square in the circle.
Right. It's another axiom that really goes without being questioned. And I think that's part of what we're hoping to do is to, we don't have all the answers, but if we can provoke thought and you guys figure it out and it's not us, that's still the same goal. The answers are had, we move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You were talking about
we all want the field to advance. At the end of the day, we want this to move forward, and we're all pieces, in it. And I'd like to think we're doing right, the things ethically and consciously, and we're not here to take anything away from anyone. We're here to build upon it. And, others have come before us and done a lot of work, so we're standing on their shoulders and
absolutely
who's going to stand on ours eventually,
absolutely.
someday. And I'm all for
well said.
it.
Well said. I agree.
You were talking earlier about how sometimes when you'll start asking a question and you'll get an answer before you finish the question. What I find it's even more intriguing is when you start thinking a question and your answer comes through before you've even spoken.
Yeah.
So I think that ties back into the universal consciousness that you've been talking about. And
I think so. Yeah. And that speaks to the fact that I believe that we're within consciousness. Consciousness is not within us, but that's the atheist, materialist, reductionist scientist mind is going to say that the brain creates consciousness, but it does not explain things like metacognition. The fact that you're aware and the fact that you're aware would not be explained. The brain cannot be a source for its own reference, for one. Mm-hmm. And for two, also stuff like that too. The same way that we are dissociative states or alters of a unitary consciousness, and what you experience is your reflective self-egoic moment, right? That's what you experience, but you're still connected to the greater good. The same way the whirlpool or your little reflective experience, the whirlpool doesn't create the water, the brain doesn't create the consciousness.
Well, Ron, you know where this leads, what clip this leads to, right? the
disaster.
I'm somebody.
Disaster.
Cancellation, and we're all off the show. No, sorry.
So I'm going to run that I am somebody clip.
Yes.
I think that's a great place to go with this.
He's awesome. He's got these things screwed up like a DJ. Yes.
I'm just going to run that.
You really didn't know that?
No.
Consciousness, open up every higher power you want. Consciousness, open up every higher power you want. Consciousness.
I'm still stuck on Chad being the DJ here. Like,
Amanda's funny.
You guys have great chemistry as co-hosts. You really do. And it shows don't work if you don't have that. You guys, I've watched other episodes. You guys have great chemistry. It's awesome.
Me too.
Well, thank you.
We're trademarking that stuff, though. I'm telling you, dude. We're going into a side hustle on a side hustle. Wait, is that a side anymore? I don't know. I'm confused. Yeah, Amanda's point was really well. Are we even here? You know, that question is, that this expands the question. You know, what is here even? You know, obviously we're in a physical, metaphysical plane, but you know, we're all the other levels that we're not aware of, and you're touching him. You know, clearly, we're showing proof that there is more than our physical realm.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we have asked, well, who are we communicating with? And we've gotten aliens, we've gotten astral, we've gotten different kind of spirit,
ethereal.
Yeah, but maybe we are communicating with all these things because the initial thing that we're communicating with is consciousness.
Yeah, consciousness explains a lot of it, even the dream part of it, right? When you're dreaming, it's the same way with meditation, visualization, things like the God helmet. Those things are causing what's called brain entrainment, which is taking a lot of the sensory input that's part of your reflective experience out of the equation so that you're more open to other things to come into your reflective little whirlpool of existence that otherwise would not. As an example, this is something that's easy to understand for folks. You go outside during the daytime, the stars in the night sky are still there, but you don't experience them during the day because those things are obfuscated by the sun and the movement and the noise. But they're still there. And so I think that like the God helmet thing and the brain entrainment, stuff like meditation, when you're in a sleep state, your consciousness is having more of a connectivity to the unitary whole because it's not being obfuscated through sensory input, which is what you're more focused on when you have those things coming in. That's the whole purpose of the Gansfeld with the red thing with the goggles, is to have your visual acuity turn inwards to look for answers because it's got something here, but it's getting nothing from it. They said they were consciousness.
And
they were. I had to tell Tony Rothman to tell his ghost to stop chiming in on my sessions.
They keep crashing. So Tony, please tell him stop it.
Yeah.
He's still watching.
A question occurred to me a moment ago, and going back to the who we're talking to point, and it comes to us. You know, it's come up with us in a session, and you know, somebody asked us, "How do we know who we're talking to?" You know, and even when in your sessions, you know, people are it's the self-identification. I'm so and so. You know, where are you at with trust to that identification? You know, there are obviously some checks and balances that can be done with somebody you know, a relative, a friend, a family member, you know, someone dear. You know, there's some good. There's things that are known that are like the safe words, if you will. You know, you can say, you know, where were we on this or that? But you know, when you're bringing somebody up who is an unknown, you know, and I don't want to be dark about this at all, but you know, we've had it come to us where you know it could be a demon for all we know. It could be this, it could be that. You know, and everybody wants to get heavy and dark and fearful of the contact, and you know, it's not where we're at with it by any means, but. You know, we don't know, and you know, especially in our sense of capture, where we're going backwards. You know, after the fact, you know, whatever time takes away to review the evidence. You know, you're in the moment. You know, you can pursue an angle. Have you ever had that concern, or until now, maybe?
Yeah. We're gonna retire tonight, dear Jamie.
Don't.
You ask really, really good questions, and I love that.
Well, when it comes to like the personal stuff like that, because you know, spirits, if you're talking about spirit, they lie, right? And they can say that they're this person, and it's not. I mean, what you should do is just ask something that is relevant that only they would know, and then because if you're going in that route, demons aren't, or things of that nature wouldn't have that information.
Well, some people believe that they might. Some people believe that they have the ability to know proprietary information that they
Well, see, I guess,
shouldn't.
yeah.
I would say that from a standpoint, I get the more of like a depth psychology approach to it. The level of trust, I think, a lot of time is inherent in what we perceive as the risk value in something. And so, what's the real risk if something's coming through and lying to us? As a paranormalist, we're getting voices.
I mean, yeah, who cares, right?
What's the risk if
guess-
they lie to me and they go, "This is President Nixon"? Fantastic. I
Awesome.
don't care if it's the guy named Phil who was in Dubuque and he worked at a gas station. He said Nixon, and I shouldn't even have a voice because I'm using white noise. Victory.
But I guess he was talking about lying to you in a negative way,
Right.
right?
Well, either way,
but I
either
get
way,
what
though,
you're
honestly,
saying.
it doesn't have to be negative, you know. And
Yeah.
let me explain a little something with this. Here's maybe my point. A better explanation of my point. With our reoccurring routine at Booby's Brewery, we know who has been there. We have the family tree, we have the history, you know. So it is a pitfall to automatically default that it is one of the members of the family, or someone who has known history within the establishment. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that person. But
Right.
you know, and I'm going to say this, that I'm not, you know, I think people who, when I say this, they're going to know who I'm talking about, but I'm not naming names. But younger investigators or newer investigators tend to fall to the pitfall that it will be Eloise Booby, the patriarch of the family. And it is, I don't know, I would say disrespectful is probably not the right way to say it, but it is a detriment to assume, first of all, that it's anybody without confirmation, you know, without some response. But it is an injustice to anyone else who would be there that we automatically assume it's that person and start talking in that direction, in angling our questions and, you know, what we're looking for to that person, or tailoring exclusively to that person.
Right.
That's the challenge, right? In every investigator anywhere else other than in Staticom, right? Or
even with
anything that's related to DRV. So, you know, how we get there, you know, is the process of deduction. You know, we kind of take some things away. Okay, we not this, not that. Okay, so maybe it's not him, maybe it's someone else. You know, and that's the male female question automatically. You know, we try to identify gender, we try to identify age. You know, so we're investigative journalists to some degree, right? Because we're asking all these hard questions, and hopefully and this is where the trust comes in. Are we getting legitimate answers, or are we just getting what we want to hear now because they're having fun with us, whoever they are, or whatever they are? You know, and that's a big thing to say, I guess. But and I don't want to. I'm not trying to lose sleep over it. But now I'm going to be thinking about it myself. You know, where is my trust in the process? But you know, you're providing better opportunities to have a trust in what you're receiving than I think anybody else I've seen has.
No, I appreciate it, and the question again is phenomenal. It's so interesting again, and not to parse words, but the trust in the process is different than the trust in who's participating in the process, which I think is where the questionable part is.
That's what I was going to say. The way you conduct the investigation is the information that you're going to get. If you're going to go there, you know, acting silly and everything, they'll probably mess with you and give you whatever information that you want.
Right.
But if you're going in there and being respectful and, you know, investigating, I think for the most part, you get legitimate, you know, answers.
It's hard to 100% know. You know, and I understand what you're saying too, because it is somewhat of a display of inductive inference for someone to just automatically say this is who it is because that's who it should be, because where we are. But again, that whole time space thing, right? There is a certain level of non-locality to it. Tony and Cherie were doing an event one time in Arizona. At the same time we were here running Staticom, and I asked how many attendees he had, and I got a number, and I spoke to him the next day, and that's exactly how many people he had. And he hadn't posted anything, we hadn't talked, but it was the exact amount of people. So that's really, really against chance as numbers or odds go to get the exact number. And it was very clear. Todd and Carmelo just pointed out that when they were at one of the Staticom events we did at the library, they believed that it was her brother come through, and he had mentioned that he pinched her arm and rubbed it in the same spot. And that's what he used to do to her. And they recorded that being said.
And that's a good example of the trust thing, right?
Yes.
And that's the other thing too, with hearing what you want to hear kind of stuff too, is that there are dialogues and jargon and proprietary information that the individual wouldn't have. You'd have to be instantly versed in a variety of careers, vocations, languages, dialects, information that you wouldn't be able to have to be the cause through PK to be sending this through the device or the speaker or whatever. So that's an example of it right there.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot to dig into. We could go on for hours, I think. So,
Yeah.
where do you think this is going, Ron? What's the next step?
Cool.
We're looking for. I mean, if you look at the earlier clips, the DRV ones to the Staticom ones now, one of the things that we and Tony and Sheree have been able to collectively do is if you in some of the other clips, the noise floor or the either staticky or what sounds like really chatter. And some people will still say at events, you've heard it sounds like more than one voice. It used to sound like a lot of voices.
Yeah.
We've cleared that up a lot. So ideally, we want to have the closest thing to Edison's phone to the dead as possible to be able to just have real time dialogue. And we're having moments of that. It's difficult too, and that's another criticism is, if this is legit, kind of, why can't you just turn it on and always do it? I pay my cell phone company every month and they can't always do it. And that's not interdimensional or interrealms. That's intercounty, interstate.
That's when we drive to Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
For the investigation.
I mean, that's again some of the thought processes that goes into trying to stomp this stuff out. They go, well, scientific method, you have to be able to repeat it 3 times under the same conditions. All right, first of all, when you're dealing with free will and an intelligence, that's absurd. If I call my father 10 times today and he picks up the phone 1 time because he's in the bathroom, he's in a meeting, he has no cell signal, right? That would say by those standards that I have a 90% fail rate because I got him 1 out of 10 times. So therefore, through scientific methodology, my father doesn't exist. It's absurd because you're talking about intelligence and free will to be able to communicate. So there are a lot of variables involved in this, and we go beyond, I think, tech and circuits with this, with consciousness, with philosophy, because philosophy is where the meaning comes from, and that's really where material science that tries to dismiss this stuff falls short. They can't explain that stuff. It's called the hard problem of consciousness. Mechanistically, you can explain a cross-country drive, right? Rotations of the tire, gas mileage. You can't explain the intent of why it happens. It doesn't speak to the guy driving the car cross-country because he's afraid to fly and the feelings that he had. When you see the color red and he sees the color red, it reminds you of an old car you had. It reminds him of a shirt he saw somebody buried in on the day of their funeral. Those are qualia. Those are phenomenal individual subjective experiences that you can't explain mechanistically. So if everything was material and could be reduced, we would all have the same experience when we saw the color red. You can't. Those phenomenal experiences, or known as qualia, are not measurable. Those are computationally irreducible. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very big on the philosophical aspects of what we do, because if you take the argument away from the people who think this is BS by debating if ghosts are real, and then you go with their laws of physics and laws of sound, you're setting yourself up to play their game. Right. Gravity was once a theory as well. Right. And matter of fact, Newton was mocked at the time. He was mocked at the time. You know what they used to say would explain gravity? They used to say, because they were taking on the idea of magnetism, but repulsion, the other side, was completely ignored. And they were saying that there was some invisible substance, sounds familiar with string theory, called effluvium. And effluvium was this invisible elastic stuff, because you could measure something if you could see it, so it's at least physical. We'll call it effluvium, and that's what draws these things together. But
words sound dumb.
That's what it was called. But now look at material science now. Now Newton is in the halls of recognition in the material world of science. But when he came out with it, because it was threatening a paradigm, oh no.
I really thought you were going to say the Hall of Fame. I really did.
No.
There is no such thing. It's crazy. Man, I had a thought there too. Dang it. It'll come back.
Well, you stew on that for a minute, Jamie. So where can people go to experience Staticom? Right. I mean, I know you're doing some lives late at night. I've caught a couple.
Trying to do that, just to share the experience. I think we're off from events.
Slowing down a little bit.
Slowing down for the holiday time. January.
We'll be
1920.
Yep, 19th to the 21st, Hanover
Hanover Tavern Paracon in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be doing a Staticom demonstration there.
You guys have a New Year's Eve gig though too, don't you?
We may not be having it.
No, that one got canceled. It got canceled.
Yeah, there was. It's not from. We know a lot of people who run locations too. Apparently, it's not the easiest night to.
Yeah.
Even people who investigate want to just chill out with their friends, and
Mm-hmm. There's family that one partner investigate, the other one doesn't, and they want to spend New Year. It's a hard, holiday. So.
Okay, well, I'd seen that. I thought maybe you had that one.
Yeah, so. I didn't post it again after I found out.
But next year we have we're going to be at Penhurst also. We're going to do an event with Jotniks at Red Mill with Daryl Marston. New Jersey Para-Unity Expo. We do an ITC exhibit at every year. We're also going to be doing Wilson Castle in June 22nd with Monique Too Soon.
Yep.
And Sam Baltrusis. Okay. We're going to the UK. We were invited to do Festival of the Unexplained for 5 days in September with the entire show of the original cast of Holter Files with Cindy Kaza, Dave Schrader, and Shane Pittman. Okay. Thank you, Sheree Rathman, and Merry Christmas to you guys too. We'll talk.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Leland definitely would love to come out.
We're doing Fort Mifflin.
Fort Mifflin, on the 9th of May, I think. Right, and we've never done that before.
Yeah,
we would love to go to Boobies. We've heard really good things about that place.
It's an open invitation. You don't just say when. We'll figure it out. Absolutely.
And there's always the usual, like Penhurst. Well, not
Para-Unity, New Jersey.
Did you mention those already? And did you mention Penhurst too?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Penhurst in May. We're doing that for
Go back.
the first time. So, yeah, and then we have clips up on our website, Gonyac Paranormal, Gonyac, Gonyac Paranormal.
Yeah,
that's a fusion of Gonzalez and Yacovetti. We looked at originally Yak Gone, but it sounds like a bug repellent, so we said no.
Gonyac. Get rid of a beast of burden.
So we have some Staticom clips on the website. There's testimonials that I mentioned earlier, and then some of those lives from Facebook. I'm putting them up on the bottom of the Staticom files page, so that anybody ever wanted to watch, because some of them are like an hour, 2 hours long. These lives, we'll put the whole thing there, so it'll be on our website in its entirety if anybody wants to see it.
And if you want to know more about it, we also you probably already mentioned it.
What?
The Paraflix.
Oh, Knowingly Talking to the Unknown, which is the slug line title of my first book, Paranormally Speaking, Knowingly Talking to the Unknown, is a 3-part docuseries on Paraflix that we did with Tony and Sheree Rathman, just explaining the evolution of how we brought back direct radio voice from the dead 6 years ago, and how it evolved into Staticom and through a partnership with the Rathmans and where we've developed, I guess, to this point. And then I have 4 books that are on Amazon. Paranormally Speaking, ITC Technomancy, the Digital Seance Initiative, which is the live events that we do, which became very bocce-like in what we've been able to provide people as experiences go. And then the last one that just came out is Paranormalization Memoirs of an Academic Layperson.
Cool.
And Jamie, he can't help it. He was a stand-up comedian. He can't help it.
That's why I like the philosophy stuff too, because satire is kind of in my blood.
Yeah, oh yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Well, I've got one more clip I want to play before we wrap up for tonight. Let me just play this, and we'll talk about it when we're done. Okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, here we go.
Looking at the truth
Talking with a famous person? Who's talking with a famous person? You or me?
So that sort of sums it up, right, Jamie?
You know,
They lie. We did say they lie.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to quote the stand-up comedian here, but what flashed in my mind listening to that was the scene in Wayne's World when Wayne and Garth meet Alice Cooper, and we're not worthy. We're not worthy. So
that's so funny.
That is funny.
Yeah, I heard talking with a famous person. I was like, wait, who's famous? You were in. I am. I'm like,
Yeah, that's funny.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, you're giving a voice to people who haven't had a voice in a long time. So I think it's pretty cool. So
we feel. Oh, thanks. We feel blessed to be able to do this. Honestly, like I said, we started out just looking at what was done in European DRV and saying, can that be replicated? Why is nobody doing it? Is it not right? Like, why is? And then we started doing it.
And I know why, because it's they don't want to put in the work.
Oh, and it's also it's not on TV. Even I started with the Spirit Box because that's it's on TV. Nothing wrong with that, but to know what came first, to have reverence, like you said, standing on the shoulders of those before us. There's shoulders that go back further than Frank Sumption in the Ghost Box, and I think that's part of what people may or may not know, that a German physicist came up with the term ITC. It's not something that happened. It was in the 1970s. It wasn't. That's not something that happened, in the 1800s or.
But that's what I mean, because the information was out there. They could have, but other methods were easier to do. The results were,
It was what was commercially put out there, but we're very grateful,
I guess,
that we get to give people moments of contact or closure, if that's what they take away from it. We don't know who's showing up. We don't know what's going to come through. We run it, and you look at our website, Gagnac Paranormal, and you look at the testimonials. Those are all within the last couple of weeks. People started sending stuff to us. I should probably post these because
we call them the voices, because that's what they are. The voices.
Well, I hadn't heard about ITs or DRV until I met you guys and I started digging into it. So I feel lucky that I got to work with you at Red Mill, and it opened a door for me to start looking into it. And I'm looking forward to working with you more and seeing where it goes down the road. So I'm really excited about the opportunities, and I'm lucky that you're not too far away, so I can get to some events that you're at. So like I said, I'm really looking forward to that.
We appreciate that.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
tonight.
and I was going to say that the fact that you guys both do a great show. You guys are both very knowledgeable, entertaining hosts, and so asking us to be here for us was very kind. We appreciate it. That's if we can impart anything as a closing message, it would be gratitude. I think one of the things that causes a lot of the drama and people's problems in the field is a sense of entitlement. Nobody owes you anything. Do the work. Let the work speak for itself. Support the community. Don't just look for it to support you. And things will unfold as they should. And this is an example of that, is that this is an opportunity you guys gave us to talk, to share what we do, to explain it. And for that, we're grateful. This is very cool. So thank you.
I'm excited for what's coming next, and this is the field. I'm sitting here and I keep looking at my phone, and I'm not looking at it because it's active, but I keep thinking, I'm in a lifespan where this was a cord with a rotary on it, on a table somewhere in my house, and then it went to a wall, and then it went to, I'm walking around with it. Now it's in my pocket, and there's more tech in this than there was in the first moon landing. It's just,
that's right.
I can only imagine where this is going as we go, and I'm excited to see where it's going to be. It's exciting where it is. Don't get me wrong, and I'm really grateful that you're doing the work and the hard work. So thank you for that. And that's our third host, Maggie, by the way. So I've noticed her pop up a few times. It's walk time, isn't it? It's go out time.
No, she was just out, so I don't have to worry about that tonight. So,
Oh.
but I do think we have to wrap up because it is getting late. So if you guys can hang out for a few minutes while we wrap up the end of the show, we'll talk to you.
Absolutely.
Is that
Yes.
okay?
And thank you again for having us, and everybody watching. Please continue to watch and support Paranormal Lens. This is a great show with great hosts, and you guys do a good job. And so we hope that we encourage people to keep watching and supporting the show. So thank you again. We'll hang out.
Thanks so much.
All right, we appreciate that. All right.
Okay.
All right, Jamie. Wow. There's a lot to unwrap in that. So, so what's coming up for Jotnick's Paranormal? We are going to be at the brewery next year. We don't have a schedule released yet. They are going to come out soon, but if you want to book a private, they do Friday night privates at the brewery. There's the person to reach out to, Melissa Keller. There's her email address. Reach out to her; she'll get it set up. As for us, we're going to take a week off next week, right, Jamie?
Yeah, we're going to take our vacation. We had a plan. And unfortunately it fell through. And the plan was for us to take a break no matter what, I guess. But I think with happy holidays and all the good stuff, we're going to take that downtime as well. That I think everybody needs to have this time of year, reflect a little bit, recharge a lot, and then hit it hard next year with some fun.
But we will be back.
Yeah, we will be back. Well, for sure.
So
you can't. No, we haven't gotten canceled yet, right? So. I get canceled on a podcast that isn't anywhere picked up. I don't know. And I do want to. I'm excited. This week was on the calendar for a while, and I was so looking forward to this. I know the next episode next Hero episode is going to be challenging to top this, but I'm going to try, and I'm going to tackle the second most famous vampire in the world, the Chupacabra. So most don't know, but it is a mystical creature of sorts that attacks livestock and other bipedal animals or non-bipedal animals. I'm sorry, and does not eat the animal but drains its blood. So it's quite a paranormal thing. There's a lot of subjective thought here, what it could be, what it is. We're going to try to address all of that and more. So coming up on January 2nd, so right after the new year, we'll be back and back on pace again. So just taking a week off.
Yep. So
we don't have a January 9th episode yet, do you, Chad?
We do not. I have to get that on the schedule. I've got some thoughts. I'm working on it.
That's what next week's for, right? The whole recharge thing.
Yeah, exactly. So,
cool.
I got some people I want to reach out to. So we'll see.
You got a guy. Okay.
Just throwing this up there, all our contact information, feel free to follow us on those places.
Yeah, we're available. We're around. So drop us a line.
Yep.
If there's anything you guys want to see or hear us cover, feel free to drop it to us. We have stuff in the queue. We got 6 months probably of stuff that we're looking at, but we can always squeeze stuff in, move some stuff around. Especially, we appreciate the content and the input from our tens and tens of fans. As we jokingly say, but it may not be that many. I don't even know. But we're always up for a challenge too of something you want to hear us do. So feel free to reach out.
So,
and I would be
but
remiss.
on that note,
I was gonna say I would be remiss not to say Merry Christmas to all and season's greetings. All of whatever it is that you believe. Enjoy this time of year. Enjoy your friends. Enjoy your family. Take the time and be in the moments. They are important times to spend. And from our family, the Jotnick's family, to yours, we wish you all the best at this holiday season and into the new year, as we won't see it till January. So, thank you.
Yep, I just echo what Jamie says. Bert, you're luck. It's on the schedule.
Okay.
So, anyway, thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for following. Thank you for joining us tonight. We will see you next year. And on that note, Jamie, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Chad. Take care, all.
Good night.